All right, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Please make sure you connect the language that you need to hear, so either Spanish or English, using the Zoom feature that looks like a little globe icon below on the Zoom screen. If you want to make any questions to the speakers, please leave them in the Q&A function so that we can answer them once all of the presentations are done. Thank you very much in advance for your questions. So we are here gathered today to speak about some of the worst consequences of the latest funding cuts in international aid funding, specifically funding that used to come from the United States, and the latest policy shifts in regional migration, also imposed by or decided by the US, especially how they impact on the most vulnerable of displaced people and migrants, who are children and their families belonging to indigenous communities, in particular Guatemalan children and families who are displaced and belong to indigenous communities. For this, we have wonderful speakers that are going to talk about a whole range of efforts by grassroots, by larger non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to protect the rights of these children and families, the protection of rights, of human rights, legal advice, and translations, not only in Guatemala, but also in the US. So I hope you like these conversations. And as I said, if you have any questions for the speakers, you can present them to us using the Q&A function. Our first speaker is Delia Cantu from Association POP-NOG. She is a multidisciplinary coordinator of the migration program of POP-NOG, working in different areas of Guatemala. She is also an activist for Mayan rights, women's rights, especially defending women from gender-based violence. And she's in charge of supporting children that are deported, that are returned from Mexico and the United States. What she's going to present now is a very interesting survey research that POP-NOG, together with other organizations, has done on the impact of funding cuts on the work of organizations supporting migrants across not only Guatemala, but also other Central American countries and Mexico. Muchas gracias, Delia. Por favor, cuando quieras.
Thank you so much, Delia, and you can start with your presentation.
Muchas gracias, Mara.
Thank you so much, Mara. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure being here sharing with you the work we're doing with POP-NOG in Guatemala. My name is Delia Cabu. As Mara stated, I'm a coordinator of the program. We are an association that's focused, that works directly with regional people. We work with children, adolescents that have had a migration experience. We call that that they have been deported to their original communities. So we accompany them in their physical health, psychosocial attention, and education. We brought them information regarding assistance for legal assistance or some economical help among what the family needs in regards to their needs and what they are facing. From PopNoc, we have been working and contributing to advocating for the rights of migrants, especially children and adolescents. Also, we work on informing the risks on the migration routes, and we orient everybody that we call potential migrants for them to know their rights and how they can take care of them, using also their rights to whether migrate or not. At the same time, the legal assistance and the accompanying of the cases that they need that, um, looking for shelter, and we do not bring that specific part, but we make coordination with institutions of this part, and we also make orientations and localizations and accompanying the migrants uh, in accompanying them, that's psychosocial, psychological, with this loss of a family member, and we accompany them in this case. In general terms, is the work we are doing with PopNoc. As Mara was saying, we participated in some organizations from Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. And starting the damage, we know that this new administration, Donald Trump administration in United States, uh, the impact of the cut of the economic assistance and this shift in the financing to Latin America has generated a huge impact on migrants and people that are moving. They need any type of protection or that are risking their lives, and it hasn't been 25 or 100, but thousands of people in this context that are looking for these assistance. They are looking for any situation that can help them to preventing any type of violence or discrimination uh, in terms of the migration route and in terms of what they are living at that time. Um, we the survey from January to March, we participated, has had 33 organizations, ONGs, and two regional organizations and international in America. And that's how we see that 52% of these organizations are receiving funds from PRM and from USAID and BHA, and at the same, again, through groups and organizations that have greater economical capacity, and this states that the funds that are directly for these 33 organizations have come from the Office of Refugees and Migration. We see these numbers that we are only making this a reach to 33 organizations. This has affected directly not only the organizations and the impact on the huge impact on the organizations in the people that work in the organizations, and this has affected directly them. And we think that from those 33 organizations, 58% could be completely shut down if they don't receive funds from these possible days. 87%, it's happening in the range of 6 months, and 13% in 1 year. that is in regards to the organizations. And this perspective on short and long term, this impact is not only on the organizations and the workers, but also the capacity to answer in front of the risks and the needs of people in moving. One of the measures, immediate measures, has been shi- the cutting personnel. Our colleagues will be able to talk about the experience of this that has the personal cut. This basically has been looking for these new ways and this new financing in 46% of the organizations have had to make cuts up to 65% of the teams. And for these 33, one of them has had to resign almost all personnel. This is unfortunate, but if this thing as closing the organization and laying off people contributes to the unemployment, and in Guatemala, this is increasing. Um, And another of the important impacts it has is in the protection of human rights and humanitarian assistance, as we talked of the organizations and the impact on the people that are working there, and the impact on the rights of the people that we are assisting. Humanitarian assistance on each of the organizations that we're mentioning and people moving. In 2024, we are estimating 758,252 people that are waiting for a response in regards to their status, migration status. Um, in regards to the National Migration Institute, together with 8,000 people that were looking for shelter in Mexico. While this data is official from the countries in Mexico and the United States, we have 936,500 people that were trying to enter the United States through the CBP1, and they were registered also 2,135,005 people that are in the frontier, in the southwest south frontier. This is also, we're not only talking about this, but we are talking about the impact on the sustainability, the impact that we have on the objectives, and objective number 5, equal rights, and the reduction of inequality, and taking care of cities and communities, sustainability, and peace, justice, and institution. These are the programs and projects that they are offering, and this assistance and protection and legal assistance that is helping people to reach the shelters and the protection and the human rights violation. It's 46% that's showing there also that has been affected in mental health, that is the psychosocial support. We are making the humanitarian assistance in cases of violence, gender violence, political, and the attention specialized to children and adolescents. As we see in these numbers, in 25 or 30% of the programs that they have brought, these special assistance like food, water, shelter, health, these have been, we saw that this is compromise on these actions and it is necessary especially in considering the increase of violence that is causing the forced displacement and the risks of these migration route and the needs of people. Another need that we that can be aggravated is the impact in the food. We know that for mobility, water is fundamental in shelter because they are looking for something easy to rest. Um, the physical health, um, the immediate attention um, in regard to and violence that's based on gender, torturing, inhuman treatment, access also to people, sexual diversity, and also medicine for people, accompanying cases, emotional, spiritual, that some organizations as us have been leading these tools to reach that mobility, to be able to attend those programs, and the personal cuts and that capacity to be able to attend the people and the organizations. We cannot do that coordination, and all of that will be centralized. In we do not have that capacity. Eh, social help in these communities and the increasing in extortion, theft, abuse, violation of rights, and that they suffer during the migration route, um, physical damage, um, because of the survey, as I shared, because of that, those are the needs and the supports and the assistance that we are having to the families. And because of that, that's how we are making reflection on how those practices will, the lines of action, how we can get to that if we are organizations and we are working and we are bringing that assistance, and we continue here as we were seeing in this collaborative work with the organizations and the coordination, where is this, where is that, and how to work together in the actions, um, visibility, and the needs in the context in which we are at this moment. Uh, what's immediate on this and the improvement of what we can do, what we can't do, and what's working, what's not working, and prioritizing the needs would be the permanency in what we were talking at the time about the organizations and the immediate impact on the personal and the restructuration of the organization, that maybe we were working in bigger areas and prioritizing maybe the areas that that's how we see it, um, helping the media and the spaces and not only on macro level, but in a community level. That's accessing to the families and bringing this assistance, this community assistance, for them to have an attention to the population, and the incidency guarantee people's rights. That's how monitoring, how can we do that in regards to visibility and the risks, and we want in regards to the needs that we're facing at the moment. We also see some strategies, preventive strategies to avoid these closing of the organizations and being able to continue the humanitarian assistance that is sharing spaces among organizations, sharing good practices, creating strategies that's sustainable for work, collaborative work, because that's also will be nurturing the communities, and the communities that will be involved, and the solidarity and the empathy among these populations. As it is said there, the accompanying, the campaigns, the funds, that's something that can bring us the the closing of the organization, uh, funds. We were bringing these with some industries such as cinema, music, arts, so that we can maybe receive donations and create any type of emergency fund, and also the diversification of the funds. That is something that will not only focusing on one place, in a fund that will be diversified, and among the volunteers, there's universities and organizations also, where they have this type of assistance, and we can do these projects together with our organizations, and this is something that will diminish the impact that we're seeing, and the funding in individual way. We will be able to enter that in a more equal way, and that's how we through PopNoc see as our weakness. We are only with the donors. We're subsisting with the donors, so we do not have that kind of financing. How we can work with that, and that's how we see our weakness. The organizations that are among these web, something that we also see is not only PopNoc but also other organizations, is that they're not that affected is the organizations related to religion, because they have other types of donors, and the communities, so we do not see how they are affected. But we listen to other situations among the United States, and through the churches and the religious donors. And this is like serving the of these 33 organizations through which we were participating through the exercise, and we were able to observe what they were saying in the communities, and this impact will be seen directly in the community. And we are talking through PopNoc in the department. We have seen closings of offices, and we are not able to continue accompanying them, and the work we were doing is stopping, and it's accumulating and we are not being able to provide that assistance, that humanitarian assistance, we are witnesses of this through the families. We need more of these evaluations and analyses. We are sure that these needs that you are able to spot are the same needs that other organizations have. So we want donors to pay lots of attention to what you have been saying for them to. Yeah, so this was very useful, and just that we have to move. So if anybody has any questions, please, you can type them in the Q&A section. Thank you so much.
Amy has a very long track record working with migrant and displaced children and unaccompanied children, working in reintegration into their communities of origin and in other types of children's rights projects. And she's going to speak about her experience, what they are seeing at KIND programs, and she oversees the safe reintegration and return of children from the Northern Triangle, from the US and Mexico. So Amy, you can show your presentation and tell us what you know from the past months.
Thank you. Thank you, Mara. It's great to be here. It's great to be here with all of you. Wonderful to follow Delia from Popnoc, and we will be talking about our relationship with her down the line as well. As you know, as we all know, it's been a time of absolute constant change, which is so hard for us to imagine, to keep track of. And if we are sitting here in this space wanting to reflect on that and learn more, just to imagine even more what it's like for the children and their families who are dealing with what the constant changes mean for their own lives. I'm here today as in my role as the director, KIND's director for reintegration programs. And my main knowledge and capacity and understanding is around unaccompanied children and separated children who return to Guatemala and Honduras in our programs. But and whether that's by an intentional active choice that they want, whether it's they feel like it's the only option they have, or whether they're being returned even though they don't want to, and that could be from the United States or from Mexico. So that's my piece of the puzzle at KIND, but KIND is global. We were started in the United States, and across the United States, we have offices that provide legal and psychosocial support to unaccompanied and separated children. We have programming for migrants, particularly migrants in transit throughout Mexico. And we have robust work doing in all sorts of areas in Europe, in addition to the work that I am part of in Central America. And as you can see from this slide, you know, our vision is, and our commitment is always to ensure that children's rights and well-beings are protected as they migrate alone in search of safety, which that commitment and that vision doesn't change, but it certainly is difficult right now. So we were founded with the idea, and you can see from the first part of our mission, that no child appears in immigration court without high quality legal representation. That's what KIND was founded on. And we also work to advance laws and policies that uphold fairness toward children, and also to work globally and make sure that there are solutions to child migration that are grounded in the best interest of the child, because ultimately we want to make sure that no child is feeling forced to migrate. We want migration to be a choice and not a need. And again, this is a very complicated reality that we're living in. Take this in for a moment. It's been less than 4 months. This is a summary of some of the shifts in policies and practices that we've seen that deeply impact Guatemalan children. Certainly not going to read through all of them, but take it in for a moment and let me highlight a few as I move to talk about what KIND is able to do and trying to do and will continue to do on behalf of unaccompanied children. I mean, early on, you know, KIND has been a partner in implementing a program, a partner of the US government in implementing a program that provides refugee status for Central American children whose parents are already in the United States. That was one of the first things to go. shortly after the new administration, when other foreign aid programs were canceled. It had a huge impact on our work in Mexico, and that was reduced dramatically. But ultimately, we're still seeing things like increasing requirements or change requirements for sponsors of unaccompanied children. So children that are in custody in the United States who, thought they had a sponsor identified, finding out that that person who will take care of them once they're released into the community is no longer eligible. And these are just these impact children at all stages in the journey. It impacts them in Guatemala before they've left. It impacts them in transit through Mexico. It certainly impacts them in the United States. And it impacts them upon return to Guatemala as well. And so KIND has several different competency areas, the areas that we really most focus on. And so I'm going to quickly go through each of those competency areas to kind of see how we've been affected and what we're doing. And then I'll talk a little bit more about reintegration, which again is the area that I know best. So our legal team, again, we have offices throughout the United States that provides legal assistance to unaccompanied children so that they don't go to court alone. I mean, I know we all understand and believe that no child should have to go represent themselves in court of any age. And this part alone could take up the entire time. And I promise not to do that to Marta. I will let her stay on schedule. But legal representation for unaccompanied children has been impacted. It was cut back in March. It's been restored, at least for now, through about September. There's litigation going on. But what that means is that during the time of uncertainty, some children were left without an attorney. Some children were going to court alone that initially had an attorney assigned to them, lost the ability to be represented by that attorney, or children that are entering the system now may not have that same access. We're also seeing that children are staying longer and longer in the custody of ORR. ORR is the Office of Refugee Resettlement in the United States, and they're responsible for the protection of children who enter the United States as unaccompanied children. And it's harder and harder to get legal counsel into those shelters to work with those children while they're in that custody. As I mentioned previously, that January 27th executive order ended the refugee admissions program. It seems that it's currently being reshaped, but that suspended the Central American Minors Program. And this was an incredible program that was in existence, and it was suspended during the last Trump administration. During the Biden administration, it came back, and now it's not functioning again. There's been a court order that it's supposed to work, but it allows children in Central America and Northern Central America to reunify with their parents who have any sort of status in the US, even if it's just having applied for status. And it was a wonderful opportunity for children and their parents or caregivers to be reunited safely. And so, like I said, there is a court order, but we're not completely clear if the government is complying. And so, of course, that means these services aren't available. Staff at KIND and other places that supported this program and other refugee programs have been cut. We're not exactly sure. There are children, in Guatemala who were approved as refugees to go to the United States and reunify with their parents. We're not positive. They should probably be able to go up under this court order, but we're not completely sure. The refugee resettlement resources that they've often relied on to help get started in the United States have not yet been restored. And then those who were in the process that looked like they had a case may have lost the opportunity to continue. And so, again, this is just one, unfortunately, tiny part of what we're seeing as far as the legal landscape for children. But I know it's difficult, it's overwhelming. And I mean, I just want to continue to reflect on the reality that this is confusing and overwhelming for us. And so again, imagine what it's like for the children that are going through that. The work that KIND does with children, with unaccompanied children in the United States, the legal work that we do is always accompanied through a trauma-informed lens, a psychosocial lens, to make sure that children have psychosocial services to go along with their legal services. So things like referring to community agencies, psychosocial support, group activities, all different types of things to make sure that children have both their basic needs met, but also the opportunity, to meet some longer term needs like goal setting and education. And this means that they're not, by not having access to their attorneys through the funding that we were receiving, that is reinstated right now. It also means it's limited the access that they have to the psychosocial staff who support them in their needs. And our psychosocial team, which I am part of, but a little bit different focus than the folks in the United States. But our team in the US are saying that, they're also really struggling with the clients that they're continuing to work with because there's so much more fear. There is so much fear going around as far as, rumors and real stories about where people are being picked up by ICE, where they're doing inspections or wellness checks or different things at homes, at bus stops, at schools, at churches. Some true, some just scary rumors, but it just means that the kids and their families are just living in absolute fear. And so my colleagues in the psychosocial team and the legal team as well that are continuing to work on these cases are having to get really, really creative about how they can provide these services for children and how they can work with them because they're afraid to go into the offices. And so, our kind has a policy team, and they are just on the front lines seeking justice, being involved at all sorts of levels from Congress, state level, across the country, across the world, trying to make sure that people understand the consequences of what is happening and promote action that safeguards the rights and protections of kids from Guatemala and for all migrant children at every single step of the journey. One of the last capabilities, the strong capabilities of KIND is partnerships and capacity strengthening and training. And this has always been a key piece of KIND's work, and it is more important today than ever. We have always looked to a partnership model wherever we work to make sure that we have communities of practice where we can strengthen our own capacity, where we can help strengthen the capacity of others, which just ultimately makes us all stronger, makes the field of professionals working with unaccompanied and separated children stronger. And this is so important that it continues today. And so on the note of partnerships, we are so fortunate to partner with 3 wonderful organizations in Guatemala, one of which is Asociación Popnoc, which Delia represents. And we are constantly meeting with them, communicating with them, both because they are our implementers of the reintegration work that we do, but also to share strategies and good practices, for them to educate us about what's happening on the ground, for us to share information with them about realities that we're seeing in Mexico and the United States, and just to continue to make sure that we're offering high quality, gender responsive programs and services for kids. And I will say, in spite of how challenging the landscape is, our Central America work, our reintegration work in Central America has not been a victim to the funding cuts. We don't get government funding, and so we are fortunate that our private partners are very, very, very much willing to continue to support this work and trying to make sure that they continue. And it's because they value how closely we work with partners like Popnoc and Delia. And so, through this partnership work that we do in Guatemala and in Honduras, we are able to reach migrant children in their communities, indigenous, rural communities, where our partners' linguistic and cultural competency allow us to really give the services to the kids and their families that they deserve and need. Through partnership, they have developed a level of trust in the communities that for a large international NGO like KIND, it would be a lot harder to gain. And they have the time and the resources to just build wonderful relationships in the community through local governments, through indigenous leaders, through teachers unions, through families, through all levels of society. They're able to make sure that kids that have returned that maybe were not detected earlier in the journey are still able to access reintegration services and get the support that we need. And so, the work that we do in reintegration, we work with the kids for a year after they've returned through our partners. And even though this work is able to continue, that KIND still has the funding to specifically continue this work, we're able to continue to honor our agreements with partners on the ground to do this work. There are still much broader impacts that we're seeing. I mean, for example, in Guatemala, the Ministry of Education was receiving USAID funding to provide school lunches, and that's gone. And so, maybe our partners were working with a family and they were putting together a monthly budget, and they know that the family didn't have to feed lunch for their child. And that helps to make sure that they have, their other needs met and what other types of support that they're getting. And that's gone now. And as Delia said earlier, so many of the resources and programs that they've been relying on to refer children to get, maybe there's a question of an international protection need, and now it's harder to work with UNHCR because their services have been cut, or maybe there was another program that has more intensive mental health services or has some job training, and that's not existing anymore. And so there's so many things, even though our partners are still out there and committed and working with children, the resources that they have to work with are reduced. And like Delia said, a lot of the organizations, even if KIND's reintegration programming is continuing, our partners are dealing with, their close colleague lost their job due to funding, or they're having to wear multiple hats to try to keep the programs afloat. And then you add to it, that family members are incredibly, children and family members in Guatemala are incredibly stressed. Remittances are down because people aren't going to work, or adults are getting returned. So the money that people rely on to survive has decreased dramatically. And then there's the ever-present and now more than ever, risk of labor exploitation for children and adults. And so that's just, some of the things that we're dealing with for returning children, for children returning to Guatemala and their family. And just to kind of give you a little bit of the picture of who participates in KIND's reintegration program, who gets to work with wonderful people like Delia and her colleagues. We work with any child that is traveled unaccompanied, whether they got to Mexico or all the way to the US, who did so under 18. They don't have to be 18 when they receive services. They can have received services. They can have returned as a 20-year-old, but they migrated in as an adult. And generally, we like to work with them as soon as possible upon return and before return, if possible. But that's a sense of who we work with. And as far as we know, we're the only program that works with kids whenever possible, both before their return and after. And so we're still out there, we're still working. We know some of these kiddos don't want to return. We know some of these kiddos, it's not in their best interest to return, but if they are returning, we want to make sure that we're providing them what they need so that they don't have to risk another dangerous journey, and that they can have the opportunity to stay and survive and thrive back home in Guatemala. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm sure we can share contact information later, but there is some of my contact information as well. And so thank you for organizing this, and I look forward to hearing from the other presenters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy, for sharing the latest developments in reintegration and return. All of this is great, and the work of KIND. Ahora vuelvo a hablar en español. Vamos a ver.
Now back in Spanish, we're going to see Monica Jose Garcia's presentation, who is the technical coordinator of regional strategies of child rights protection in El Salvador, Mexico, and Guatemala in post-war sympathic, and she's going to present the protection mechanism transnational for children and adolescents in the context of human mobility as a proactive answer that had been organized and presented less than a month ago to protect the human rights of these children and adolescents. So thank you so much, Monica.
Muchas gracias, Mara, y muchas gracias a todos por el tiempo.
Thank you so much, Mara. Thank you for the time that you provide to show and give you the stage of Guatemala, as my colleague Delia and is the subject of migration is an important subject for the country, and this will be more complex regarding the answers given because of the reduction of the budget to generate this budget of attention and increase of the praise that are given. And we are really worried since 1988 that the coordinator of institutional promotion of human rights, we see how infants, how childhood is displaced in our country. And we don't have clear policies regarding the protection of children and adolescents, and that adds to an empty space regarding the protection of children and adolescents and migrants, accompanied or not accompanied. I represent, as you see, we are working with a few organizations of civil organization from Mexico, Honduras, and Guatemala. I would like to briefly talk to you about this mechanism that we seek to give an answer or generate spaces of interaction between society, institution, warrant institution that is an issue in the Central America Triangle that has as an order to protect children and adolescents. I cannot move my screen. One moment. This process is born from the children and adolescents' voice that are directly or indirectly interacting with migration, and we have a lot of children return which mother, father, or caregiver lives out Guatemala and migrated because of the needs, because of these issues not covered, more structural that in this country is the pending debt that forces to migrate. And this mechanism rises from this knowledge from the voices of children and adolescents. What are their needs? What do they identify? How did they move to Mexico? Many were deported. So they know what are the needs. They know what are the risks they face, not accompanying children. And from their voices, the need was born for a regional system that allows to have a guideline of protection. And I would like to talk to you about how the mechanism was born, our motivations, how it was created, what is the mechanism. I don't want to bore you to present you an structure. The entities behind the mechanism as a civic society is the ones that I already told to you about, and you can see on screen. And we're starting some actions or incident actions with warrant institution of countries that we represent, with Congress of the Republic, because we have to generate an incidents process. And this is going to change the norms, the budget, and also with other organizations that work towards the human rights of children and adolescents. And this has to be a block space. We cannot present this alone. We have to add efforts so this proposal can have more space and can be taken into account, and some applications and challenges of the mechanism and lessons learned. And I want to talk to you about what we identified with the children when we started the process of sharing experiences. And in the migratory cycle, we find discrimination, return, sickness, human traffic, and with all that, there's not a transnational input for the children and adolescents. Also from parents that accompany us in the process, and we identify these problematics that are add to the inexistence of an approach that children travel in parades to get to Mexico, and these problematics are being added. What is expected to generate with a protection mechanism within the migrant context, and these problematics can be approached of displaced children and possibly migrants that are in emergency crisis they have issues that have been approached with this mechanism. The shelter application, the stational migrants, these issues have to be approached within the migratory cycle. It's important to know that there is a cycle and a mechanism that can allow protection for children and adolescents. As I was telling you, the motivation for this mechanism was that it was going to be a participation with an active participation with children and adolescents, and their needs are taken into account from their vision point of view, from their daily life. It's not the same as we as adults may interpret their needs, and they have to have the voice to explain because they are the ones that live this. And the adults are not the ones taking the decisions, but the children or adolescents that must claim their rights and be heard by authorities that work for them. With this mechanism, we'll look to have an articulation between organizations for the answers and protections that this will imply homologation of this mechanism of warrant organizations and can work in a coordinated way. The motivation we consider to carry on this mechanism. Briefly, I will explain because this is complex. The mechanism seeks transnational group of high level, and this is the one who takes the decisions, the important decisions, the Ministry of Foreign Relationships between Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras. It is important that they can be this group at a regional level, can coordinate and make decisions for give answers for children and adolescents. And we will have a counseling, and we would work in civics society, the United Nations, because we are daily working in community, in the departments with a high rate of migration, and it's important to have this vision to provide counsel regarding the decision making. Technical group, it would be, as I was telling you, the warrant institutions. They're forced to give answer and protection to childhood. And here we see Secretary of Social Wellness in Guatemala and counterparts in different countries because they operate and have to watch the field for the protection of children and adolescents. And I will repeat constant counseling of the United Nations and civic societies. What do we seek? An exchange of migrant information among countries and can be detected and identify children and adolescents that present a vulnerability and to be a diagnosis for attention and health and the determination of superior interest and plan a restitution of rights, a follow-up of the plan and a transition of independent living for children and adolescents. It is important to mention that what we seek with this mechanism is a system that can identify children and adolescents that go with family or not accompanied, because that is a pending subject in America. There are some statistics that we know we don't have real facts that allow us to identify how many children and adolescents migrate accompanied or unaccompanied. Every country have their specific way to handle these statistic facts, but it's not integral. 2 years ago, we had a new policy approved regarding childhood. It's pending, it's a debt for us because it's not clear on how to approach or attend the vulnerability. There is not a budget designation to attend children and adolescents is in this new administration plan. It's being approached as family group and an answer for the social secretary and seeking for shelter and be returned to their homes, and there's educational plan so they can be reinserted in curriculum. This is still being uncertain. When we see in the departments in the cities that we intervene, we see how difficult it is for children to be in a school curriculum, and that means that before in their places, in their houses, they are not able to retake their plan life. And with that, we seek the elaboration of a plan, and that will imply as well information processes to all institutions to identify and to know how to handle a case. What does the mechanism seek? The strength of the key factors and a case management that for us is really important because we seek the needs, the high interest of the children and their rights, giving a follow-up between institutions that will be for the case management. What would this imply? I will go back. It's important to find a regional program. The strength of the capacities of key roles representing in both border zones is a case plan, reincorporation, reinstitution of the lifeline of children and adolescents, accompanied or unaccompanied, and this allows a coordination and would force a coordination among countries. This not only implies identifying statistically how many children and adolescents have an issue with mobility, but the work as a civic society, as a government can give to strengthen these spaces or protection mechanism in all the
some practices we have and that have been that could have gone in a space to this mechanism in the protection of the rights of children and adolescents in Mexico. It's a perspective and a plan of action to the OAA 2327 and external support in investigation, and that could be made specific this protocol to children and adolescents that are not accompanied, that has had its advances, at least in Mexico and Guatemala. And we have at that moment reactivation with the changes that the government has had in consulates in Mexico, in having at least data of that provides us an identification of how many children are entering Mexico. At least that is what we have been making the advance in this protocol. And to thank you, we hope that this has been made clear to what we have with the mechanism. It's a process that has lots of incidents and that will imply the opening of the government, the institutions, and the people who make the policies, the public policies in this country, and being able to work with the government. We're working with the offices of that help migrants, that are the ones that are helping the people in their communities. So many times this is what we see at a macro level, and we are not able to identify that these offices, the community level, have these structures that work at a level of community, are the ones that will be giving the attention and looking for the support of anybody that will be coming back. And this is still a subject that will not, we haven't been able as a society, as a government, to provide the support to the structure that have made these decisions on how we can generate the capacities to provide these authorities to bring the response to avoid this. So this is a structural topic, and that's still something that we are owning in this country, and that's perpetuating the migration. But it's important for us to be able to maintain the protection of the rights of children and adolescents. And I will be here waiting to see if there's any doubt and having the space to give you this opportunity. Thank you so much. Thank you, Monica, and I hope that in the future we can organize a dissertation regarding the implementation for these for other regions, and that can be implemented in the political willingness of that protocol. So thank you so much. Now we are going to the United States, or only representing in the United States of an organization. He is Jerónimo Ramírez. He's the Chief Director of Comunidad Sol. That is an organization that has a community base in the northeast of Ohio. That's confirmed, and that provides services to indigenous people that have been displaced of ancestral territory in Guatemala nowadays. Kichel, he and Aguacateco, and he will be talking about the relations of human rights that these populations are suffering once they reach the United States and once they are settled in the country, and what are the services that Comunidad Sol provides to children and adolescents and their families. Thank you, Jerónimo. Good afternoon, everybody, and I hope that I'm not talking that fast, because I talk pretty fast, so that I do not make complications for the interpreters. I am an interpreter as well myself, and it's very difficult when people speak fast. Please feel free to make me stop if I'm talking too fast. So we, as an organization, we are the first organization in Northeast Ohio, Indigenous, and one of the organizations in the United States where we have worked strongly with children, Indigenous children that have been displaced. Our organization has been founded by the people that are indigenous, that have been displaced here in Ohio, and we created Comunidad Sol. In regards to indigenous children, since they have gotten to the colonial frontiers in the United States and Mexico, it has been their rights. The rights have been violated, because since they go after the borders, they are called as Guatemaltecos or migrants or Latinos or Hispanic people, and their identity, their indigenous identity of their countries they belong to, it's made invisible, and that's a violation of their human rights, as we see in 2018 or 2019 of the death of children, Maya children in the frontier of the United States, because there was no interpretation access in their languages. From a cultural point of view, as we are able to see from the Masha, that's an organization that fought a lot for them to ask for justice for the death of these children. In 2019, these children died because of the lack of access to interpretation. So now, with this cut in the funds, these kind of violations in the human rights have been increasing in the frontiers, and also in the agencies and organizations that receive the financing from the government. So through these cuts, they are not providing the interpretation in the indigenous languages, or they are not agreed to pay to the interpreters of indigenous languages, or they only provide services in English or sometimes in Spanish. but many of the community members do not speak Spanish. They speak mainly Ixil in Ohio, Ixil, Kichi, Aguacateco, Acahuale, and Ichi. So the invisibility in the frontier and in the different agencies is violating the rights, the human rights, and the access to interpretation. What are we seeing here in Ohio and in the United States? What are we seeing in Ohio when minors reach, indigenous minors reach enter the school, and since they are not qualified or identified correctly as indigenous people, they're qualified as Hispanic. So they enter a program of English classes. And once they see that they do not speak English and they also don't understand in Spanish, they are sent to classes to watch TV or to a different room to play. Because one of the examples that we have in the west of Ohio, one of the schools was receiving the funds for the children, but they were not allowing them to enter the class, but only being in a room and watching TV. So until the children were able to talk and the parents joined in order to sue the school. So this is what's going on. And also the government in Guatemala has left them alone, the displaced people, especially minors. They in 2013 this has increased. In 2013, there was an FBI relate in also in a company that I have just shared the link. That was there was about 150 minors and only one Kichi interpreter for 4 different people and 1 interpreter for 150 minors. And in this post, as you can able to see, there are only 25 minors that are the ones that have the immigration status, but the other ones were invisibilized and forgotten. So the government in Guatemala is not providing an identification for the minors that are displaced. So since they do not have an identification or a passport or an ID, they are not able to apply for job permits, and the only way that they have to work is by switching their ages and working in companies that violate their human rights, that exploit them in work. So that is what has been happening with minors and in the increase in Ohio and in other places. And also the internal migration we are seeing in April of this year, we had a mobile consulate. That's unfortunate that we have to demand for our rights that correspond us, because it is a right. It was a dialogue of 3 months with the consulate and with the Guatemala government for them to reach 450 people, and among them 150 minors, for them to be able to have their ID and then be able to apply to job permits so they can have jobs as minors. This is what is happening. And also internal migration, we were able to see that minors are Ichiles are migrating to Maryland, and Quiches are migrating to Illinois and Cajuales, and in Nebraska, Quiches are migrating because they are scared of the persecution of the government in this new administration, or the funds have been cut by to interpretation in the schools. So this is what has been happening, and the services that we are providing is negotiation with the consulate. That's unfortunate because of our rights, so that they can have their IDs. And we are also making surveys to see when the governments are failing and where the rights are being violated, and we are able to see in the schools that the schools are saying, well, you can change in a caring company, or bullying is increasing among indigenous children that are being displaced. And to finish, I will share the link of the Masha League. That is one of the organizations that are that have been financing us. and all of the audiences, so that we do not forget that in Guatemala there are 22 languages that are being spoken, and not only Guatemalteco, but 60% is what's being said, that we're 60%, but we know that it's mostly Mashas in Guatemala, and that are the ones that come here and they do not have access to technology with CBP1. And let's imagine migrating or running away with a phone without internet, how we will be able to have access to an app without understanding what's going on in the frontier. Because I know that I'm in Chile, because they are now saying that I'm in the frontier. So being scared of being deported, they accept this category. So many of them were deported. We know that the Guatemalan government hasn't done anything to identify them as indigenous people. And we know that they have been deported because they were not listened because of the persecution that is being taking place at the moment. So that is our little task and what we are capturing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jerónimo, and for giving us the explanation and the details about the problematics that children are facing in Ohio and in the United States. To close, I want to ask, what is one recommendation that you could give to the public on how we can help them? Because this thing we're facing is very exasperating, and we have all described the policies as inhuman, unfair, against human rights, against children's rights, basically pro violence, pro gender violence that we have been seeing in this last time. And this can be overwhelming. So I would like to know one, or I would like to hear one positive proposition or recommendation that you would give among one of the actors that we are not in direct contact with, people, so donors or people that make investigation that are in the academy, among others. What are the recommendations? Jerónimo, you can repeat what you said, but if I understood correctly, is having more conscious that not all of migrants are Latinos, but if people from Guatemala, for example, are indigenous and they have their own needs and their own linguistic identity. And Amy, Monica, Delia, what would be your recommendation? I of what Jerónimo says, I think that these problems in migration is that they have labeled us, that we are all the same, and there's differences in the ways of thinking that make us be different. The fact that when we cross the frontier, they say that we are all Mexicans, that is something that gives you an idea or how they have been labeling us and how we are all from the same place. And I think that the most important thing is the academy, for them to study, to evaluate, to be able to see the differences and why is migration taking place, so that we understand why is that taking place. Migration takes place because of structural problems in each country and the lack of response that they have been giving. And I'm sure that if all of us had the conditions of living rightly and with dignity, we wouldn't have the need to migrate. I'm sure we would all be staying in our place where we were born. I am a testimony because my parents migrated to the United States to provide a quality of life to us, and I'm thankful for them because I was able to go to university because of that effort. So we have to understand that there's diversity and there's a reason for migrating that's very particular, and we do not have to make stereotype on migration. There's structural reasons that give that response, and especially on a human side. So we do not see that as a legal phase, but we have to see the face of that children, that adolescent that's migrating because they're being persecuted by the Mara, or because their mom is a widow and 8 brothers and they have to go push through that. So those are one of the stories that I could tell you that is particular, and we cannot make a general statement of that. So there's a specific reason for migration. So I think that it's important also to see the human rights of migration. Thank you. Thank you. Amy? I'm sorry, I thought Elia was going to speak. I think that there are many things what we have to do. One of them is remembering, as Monica is stating, that we are talking about human people. We never have to uh, see each people in looking for a better life or security or protection as a number, statistics or invasion. We have to see them as human beings because they are, and we definitely have to make an investment of time and resources to donate or to look for programs that support these people that are migrating, whether in Guatemala or in the United States or in other places, and make sure that they are getting what they need, because now more than ever we need those resources, because human capital and the work that they do, as we are doing today, is worth a lot, but we have to earn or salaries, and for them that are in the United States to talk with the representatives and continue understanding what's going on, uh, who can help and organizations can help, or maybe paying attention and saying that these things have to change and that each children and adolescent deserve this dignity. Thank you, Amy and Delia and Jerónimo, as your representatives of organizations for indigenous people with experience in displacing. What would you recommend to the public among how to support them? So how to support in Ohio, and Jerónimo and Delia, how to support them in Guatemala? Well, okay. Thank you. Yes, no, I don't want to be repetitive on what Monica was saying, but I would leave a small message on what we discussed with children and adolescents, that we all are migrants. We all have rights. We are all children migrate with their rights, and that is important. What we see, the discrimination issue, and Jerónimo was mentioning the same. We are labeled, we are signaled in the United States, and there are levels in discrimination that has been very strong with children, and I would say that the support for them is unfortunate for the families, and we have, as Monica said, infinite number of cases and information among the families that they are expressing the support that we are giving, and for us, that economic support that we are providing the families and the company is essential, because we're looking for that for the families. So what we are looking for is an economical support. Uh, I'm mentioning this. They say the families, if we want to make that company and that psychosocial support, we are interested in paying our debts. And that is so strong, because people who migrate uh, come back in the same or worse conditions. So for us, bringing them any help to the families, because this is what they're looking for, the economical support for the families, for migrants that are localized, and that is all. Thank you. Thank you. And Jerónimo, The recommendation will be for organizations that are alive, that are not indigenous, that is to work correctly among the perspective of other organizations that are trusted by the community, and us as individuals continue with the work that the organizations make. As Delia and the rest of them mentioned, we all live off that funding, so continue with the work of the organizations and learn from us as organizations, listen and how we want them to talk by us, because we can represent ourselves and we can talk and we can occupy those places, but if it is possible to have indigenous people in the team for them to work correctly with the children that do not have company, that are displaced. So listen to us and learn from ourselves and question ourselves how we want to work and to continue working. And thank you. Thank you, Jeronimo. It's very useful what you're recommending. And Monica? Thank you, Mara. Going back, I would like to say that many of us are here representing organizations of civil organizations, because it is this way. We are taking the responsibility of a state or a human responsibility that's facing the problems, and that implies resources and work and personal for us to have that cultural approach. So those resources are limited, and we wouldn't be able to say this to Delia. This has been reduced, and that reduces the ability to answer. And many organizations and civil societies are in the most affected zones that have the highest migrational status. We are in a part of Guatemala that's departments with high migration indexes, and this has affected the ability to respond, and that reduces the capacity to provide answers or support and restructuration of the psychosocial support with the funds, with the personal, because that has been reduced, and we have to take that into account. We are giving the response that the institutions and states should be giving, but since we are making the great effort with many few resources. Thank you. Thank you, Monica. And as Celia said, we don't have to romanticize poverty, but among organizations, we have to work for a ONG that has indigenous people, and that it is important for people that provide these services for them to have a life that's with dignity, fair, with all they need for them and their families. That is the evaluation that Delia has, that funds for everything, to help the people and also to give them a life that's with dignity every day, all day. So it is excellent that we mentioned this. I really want to for being here, for the reflections, many negative things, but you're very proactive people that have lots of recommendations and suggestions that we will be uploading and sharing with the people, the corresponding people. And we hope that this is the last thing I always forget to say. This event was organized by Collaborative on Global Children and sponsored by through the Institute for the America for Georgetown. There will be a web page in English and Spanish, and I will also make a list of all of the resources that you shared. So the people that are interested among the organizations can do this. Or if you want to donate, if you have money that you don't know what to do with that money, you can donate. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for all of the people that are here with us today. And we continue being in contact.